My name is Mary, and my last name is Batchelor. I am the pastor here at Hands for Christ Community Church.
I have a hearing family, and they were always chatting and leaving me out. So I remember one time, it was Thanksgiving, and everybody's sitting around talking, and I decided that I was going to take matters in my own hand, and I tapped everybody on the shoulder, and I screamed like I was a cop or something. Like as if I was a cop and I was shooting, and I screamed at them. I said, "Now you pay attention to me. I am deaf, and I want to talk." You know, they were ignoring me. "Put your heads down," I said. And they were shocked. And for a moment there, they understood me, you know. It was like I was a cop. I was using my voice to shoot them. So they said, "Okay." And my brother looked at me and he said, "Are you all right?" And he touched my head. And I said, "I'm fine." So now it's slowly starting to improve. They're starting to learn a little bit of sign language. But it's still not the same as in this church where everybody signs. Much better here. You know, at home it's just short little conversations. But God is helping me. So I'm trying, and they're trying.
Oh, I've had many funny things happen to me as a deaf person. One time, I was with my aunt, who does not sign. And at that time, I didn't use sign language myself. In fact, I didn't know sign language. I was what we call oral, and I only spoke. So, my aunt is looking for her keys. And she turns to me and asks, "Can you help me find my keys? Check my pocketbook, see if they're in there." But what I understood was, check my pulse. Now, I know she has had heart trouble, so I rush over to her to check her pulse. And she looks at me and says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Checking your pulse. That's what you told me." She said, "No, my purse, my purse." It was so funny.
You know, when I was growing up, many things happened in my family. I mean, half the people were deaf and half the people were hearing. And I always kind of felt in the middle, you know. So one time while I was growing up, well, really many things happened, but one thing in particular I remember. My parents and, you know, many of my deaf family members on Friday nights would go to the deaf club. But the deaf club was in Manhattan. So, of course, we had to take the subway. So, you know, that was a trip for us. So, and I remember one time I had two cousins, my brother, the three of us, my brother, my cousin, and I, we were on the train. And I was a little resentful of the people because they would always look at us like we were weird. Growing up, they'd just look at, "Oh, how sad. Those poor, I feel so sorry for the children because their parents are deaf." And, you know, I'd hear this, and I really hated that. So one day, we're sitting, and my parents were across, in the seat across from me, with my aunts and uncles, and they were chatting, you know, signing away. I was with my brother and my cousin, and some hearing people were talking, and they said, "Oh, I feel so sorry for those children." I must have been, I don't know, 6 or 7, and I had heard that so many times, over and over. Of course, not the same person, but the same story. And I just decided I was going to say something. And I said, "Lady, those are my parents, and you don't have to feel sorry for us. I feel sorry for you because you don't know sign language." And they were so shocked they got up and walked away. And my brother said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "I'm fed up. I'm so tired of them. There's nothing wrong with being deaf." There was another story I remember. I remember I wanted to do something. I might have been about 10 years old. And I asked my mom for permission, and she said no. So, and I'm pleading with her, please, please. And she said no. So I was angry, and I turned around and I cursed. And suddenly I felt her hand on my shoulder. And I was shocked. I said, how did you know I cursed? Oh, she said, don't you curse. And I said, how did you know? And I said, she's not really deaf. But she said, I know because I saw your body language. And that really taught me something. Wow. I never realized that.
One of the most rewarding jobs for me is being a pastor. To be able to see the sparkle in a person's eye as they catch the true meaning of God's word, as to who God really is. There is just no words that I can find to describe that inspiring warmth that I feel.
I had been looking for a deaf church for many years. I live in New Jersey and attended a Catholic church there. I attended regularly. However, it was an interpreted mass. The priest didn't sign himself. It's just not the same.
I would say it was about 12 years ago, and my mom used to go to one church in Manhattan. There was only one church, mind you, that had a priest that signed. So, and that was it. Any other churches, there was really offered nothing for deaf people, and it would just go over her head. So she used to go there. But when we moved to Staten Island, it was much harder for my mom to go to Manhattan. And then I worked, and then to have to bring her to church, that was really, really tough. So, and I also had a deaf aunt who lived with me, and it was tough. So I didn't know what to do. There was one church that we would go to, and it had no interpreter. But that church was the same one that we used to teach people to become interpreters. So I asked them, maybe would you like me to bring interpreting students in to interpret for the deaf people? And he said, fine. So they would interpret. But when you're interpreting, you really have to understand what the priest is saying and understand that the priest is hearing. He's coming from a hearing culture, so he's not expanding on things the way a deaf person might need, because hearing people have all this back information, that they already know, and deaf people don't have access to that. So it was tough. It really started to hit me that this was really just not good enough for deaf people. So I started to see that there was a real need. And I thought, well, maybe I could use my language and my knowledge of the deaf world. So, because I could expand. I know where they're coming from. I know their culture. So it's more, because I have this family background of deaf people, and that really hit me. He used to go to a church that had no interpreters. I didn't understand a thing. I felt bad because I was with my daughters, Victoria and Valerie, and it annoyed them that I was constantly asking them what was being said. I told them I was sorry, but I needed to know what the priest said. I felt so sorry for Victoria. There was a lot of pressure on her to pay attention and interpret for me.
Being at that dedication ceremony for the baby, it was really emotional for me. It made me think of my own son. I wasn't pregnant with him. He's adopted. But nonetheless, he's my son. It's so beautiful to see the special affection God has for children, how he loves them and wants them to have a relationship with him. You know, God says we have to learn about faith. Well, if you want to learn about faith, just look at children. They have faith naturally. They're unafraid. We can learn from them.
Somebody said to me, you really have all the qualifications really to plant a church. So what do you think? I went, what? That's not for me. That's a lot of responsibilities. I said, mm-mm. But as time went on, I prayed more and I asked God, what is it that you want me to do? And where would you want me to do it? And how? Sometimes it's like a no-brainer. Because, if you consider my background, it seems like God has really prepared me to really work with the deaf community and to be able to plant a church. And I knew that many deaf people had their own ways of doing things. However, I just really felt strongly that this was the right time, the right place, just the right everything.
The deaf church is so much better for me. I don't have to bother my daughter because the sermon is signed. Mary, the minister, signs the whole service. That helps me understand so much more. I'm no longer overwhelmed.
I had been looking for a deaf church for many years. I live in New Jersey and attended a Catholic church there. I attended regularly. However, it was an interpreted mass. The priest didn't sign himself. It's just not the same. The pastor signs. She's a coda. The parishioners are all deaf. I have many friends at the church. I love it.
What is ASL? Well, ASL stands for American Sign Language. This is predominantly the language of the deaf. Their culture is a strong part of this language. This language allows the deaf to have a sense of pride, and this has become part of their identity. The structure of ASL, or American Sign Language, is different. It closely resembles Spanish or French syntactical structure. ASL, that's my first language.
There was a time when I didn't know what American Sign Language was. My mother didn't want me to learn sign language. The medical community gave my mother the wrong idea about signing. Maybe she thought learning ASL would have a negative impact on me. I don't know. But I am so happy I took American Sign Language classes. I learned that ASL is a pictorial language. Suddenly I began to understand complex concepts. Every aspect of my life improved. Even my writing improved. Anyway, that's where I first met Mary, through ASL class.
Every Wednesday, in the basement of the Hands for Christ Church, Pastor Batchelor teaches Bible study to the deaf worshipers in American Sign Language.
We have also established a weekly Wednesday night Bible study, and it's conducted a little different than most Bible studies are.
The Bible study helps me so much. It helps me to understand more about the deeper meaning of the scriptures. And then I could relate it to the reading when I'm by myself. And it makes sense. It was very hard when I tried to read the Bible alone. But at Bible study, I can really, it helps because ASL incorporates facial expression and body movement, and it helps me to understand the meaning of the scriptures. It's amazing, and I'm learning new vocabulary, and it applies to my home study as well. I understand so much better.
For Bible study, what I've gotten the topic is I've asked some other people to give me some of the topics, and I use that. And that allows me to understand what some of the problems that the people are experiencing. So I use that, I study it, and I show them through a Bible study how to handle those problems.
As I watched the movie Passion of Christ about Jesus' death and resurrection, I realized how the movie impacted my life. This movie showed me how Jesus suffered, truly suffered, for me. After watching the movie, I thought to myself, you suffered for me. And I've always thought I've suffered. But then I realized, no, he suffered for me. And I am so grateful for him. And I had to say, thank you, for I'm nothing without you. She's my best friend. She's like a second mother to me.
Mary is so important to this church. It's her sharing, it's her knowledge, her ideas that she adds to the church. Without her, really, it would not be the same at all. But of course, we have to have a relationship with God. Without that, the church would be closed.
She's my teacher. She's my guide. She's my rock.